Hello and welcome fellow motorsports fans. Once again I'm back to talk about a week action-packed with single-seater racing. We had new series finally beginning their seasons with GB3 and GB4. We had the return of Formula E and most importantly of all, it's been a fantastic week for young female racers and we'll talk all about it in this episode. Before we get to this though, a quick aside, and this is we won't be talking about Saudi F4 this week. This is mainly because, first of all, there have been races last night, which I haven't been able to watch yet. And also their schedule is just all over the place at the moment. The season is about to come to its logical conclusion anyway. And truth be told, it hasn't been super duper interesting. So we'll just do a bit of a Saudi F4 review when the time has come. But for now, we'll go over to French F4. French F4, one of my favorite F4 series, as in I do really appreciate the one-team format that they are using, but it comes with one huge problem, which we've discussed in the past with other series, and this is I don't speak the broadcast language, I don't speak French, so in case I'm talking about penalties or mechanical issues or whatever, keep in mind this is a lot of speculation and Instagram posts, because I cannot understand the commentators no matter how hard I try. With this out of the way, I do have to say there wasn't that many races to watch in French F4 anyway, because race 1 unfortunately wasn't broadcast at all, as does happen every now and then with the French F4, and then the second race had to get cancelled due to rain, which we'll talk about rain a lot during this episode, but this was the worst version of it, I suppose, and the only one demanding a full-on race cancellation. So here we are, we only really have one race to go off, as in one race where I could actually see the drivers, but we still have a decent idea of the pecking order I might suggest. So first and foremost, Yanni Stevenheydens, I hope he is pronounced. He has, well, more or less taken the anticipated role of being the primary championship contender, at the very least in the early stages, while the rookies still get to grips with the car. He is the highest ranked returning driver, and one where it's already, I would have kind of liked him to just step up already, but I can see the appeal of going for a proper championship attempt. On the flip side though, this means he actually has to get it, in my opinion, otherwise this was maybe a year wasted a little bit. Now, it's hard to tell how dominant he really was in these races, but all I can tell for sure is, first of all, he did win the first race, and second of all, he did win the third race on track. He got a penalty. This is, again, where the language barrier comes in. I don't know what he got a penalty for, but nonetheless, it did drop him back down quite a bit because there was a safety car at the end of the race, so naturally the 5 seconds does hit very, very hard. Quite annoying for him, but I think, yeah, it is safe to say he was the fastest guy this weekend, period. In terms of the rookies, there's Jules Caranta, who obviously we've seen in the F4 UAE. It's no real surprise that he hit the ground running and he's been very quick, and he was the lucky boy to inherit the win in the third race as well. So there we go, instantly a win on his, well, not debut, you know what I mean, French F4 debut, I suppose. And then a guy I didn't know at all before this, who is Taito Kato, a Japanese racing driver, and once again, one of the leading rookies, like clear cut, very impressive drives, had a podium, had a couple podiums actually, so yeah, very, very nice driving. And in general, I do have to say, the rookie field in this French F4 has been performing really well. So there was also Ryan Cassidy, who I also didn't know, the Thai driver. Then Chester Kiffer, who we haven't even talked about during the F4 UAE, even though he had a very solid one-off round there, but he was consistently fighting in the points, like sort of in this leading midfield group, if you want to call it that. And then even Montego Maassen, a German driver. I've known him a little bit from karting, but yeah, he also did better than I expected, I might want to add, even by also scrapping in the points pretty consistently. On the flip side, Caranta side, the local boys have not, you know, they were a bit of a mixed bag, as in the two big names you are looking out for is Weisenburger, the reigning, I know I am butchering the name, we've talked about this before, the name looks very German and my brain cannot comprehend pronouncing it in some weird French-English hybrid. It doesn't make any sense. I'm very sorry about that. Either way, reigning French karting champion, he is definitely a guy to watch out for. And then Augustin Bernier, also one of the top anticipated drivers. both very quick, both scrapping for points, but both suffering from pretty poor qualifying. And Weisenburger had a nice charge in the third race, then a wreck. So also some, you know, the racecraft deserves some more polish, but I think they will also find themselves in the mix sooner or later. There isn't much more to talk about just yet, I don't think, as we need a few more rounds to see how they all stack up against each other. So instead, let's move over to the British Isles. Let's talk about GB4 around Oulton Park, and I do have to say, surprisingly so, this was probably my favourite single-seater racing to watch the entire weekend. It maybe wasn't the most action-packed. Oulton Park is a bit of a rough circuit for actual racing, but first of all, tricky weather conditions made sure that we still saw some amount of on-track action, overtaking and chaos and all that sort of stuff. And we also had an almost historic female win. Before we talk about this though, I do want to bring up quickly a thing about the championship. I am getting very excited about this, even though it comes with a huge downside, which is last year's champion, Tom Mills, has disappeared entirely. Obviously, it's been known he's been struggling with budget issues. He won the championship a round before the season ended, so he didn't even bother spending the money on that last round. And as far as I know, that's the last time he's been in a racing car, at least while on a broadcast as well. So very sad. If any of you have any more information, let me know what Tom Mills is up to, because he was really, really good last year. And yeah, I'm very worried that he is going to be part of that long list of people that just ran out of money and have to get a real job. It just unfortunately looks to be the case here. Either way, GB4 is a very cool and interesting new concept for this season, which is that they award a partially funded F1 Academy seat for the highest rated female driver in the series, which means they naturally attracted a fair bit of female talent. Now, talent is a very broad term here. It's not equally spread, let's put it this way, but there's one woman stands out, who is Alisha Palmowski. In case you don't know her, she's been in the Ginetta Juniors last year, did very, very well, but had sort of a heartbreaking season where she's got so close to winning races time and time again, and sort of never did. I'm pretty sure she didn't get a single win. Now, not winning the championship, her main rival was Freddie Slater, so, you know, go figure, no shame in that. But not even getting one win was very tough to watch over the full season, you know, when clearly the talent and the pace and everything was there. So to see her get that immediately out of the gate, hit the ground running in race one and just win it on debut, that was amazing. Sure, she was aided by the pole sitter stalling, we'll talk about that in a second, but nonetheless, she still had to do the job, and she did so dominantly. Congrats, and I am very excited to see, you know, how she'll develop over the course of her single-seater stint. Unfortunately, the rest of her race weekend didn't quite go according to plan, where she stalled on the grid in race 2 and was sort of bogged down in the midfield. Very tough racing on a damp track. And then in the third race, she got wrecked by a guy who I mainly remember for this particular move. Darren Nareen, I hope it's pronounced. And yeah, keep an eye out for this guy because he was a bit of a menace. He lost half of his front wing, but decided to still fight for every position like his life depends on it. And naturally understeered and took out poor Palmowski. I don't think there's much she could do about that, so don't get confused by her actual points on the board at the moment. She was very good this weekend. Now, in contrast, unfortunately, Chloe Grant, you might have heard of her if you follow female racing at all. She is just not the same level at all. Technically, she's also supposed to be in one of those really good cars, able to fight at the sharp end, but in the non-reverse grid races, it just straight up wasn't the case. And then in some ways, the reverse grid race was even more depressing, where with a lot of chaos and carnage surrounding her, she found herself with a pretty big lead, like halfway through the very, very short race, but she did get reeled in pretty quickly and, you know, she didn't even get that win. So obviously it shouldn't be the level of expectation, oh yeah, you have to win this race now to impress, but just given the circumstances after watching it, yes, she should have won this race to impress, I'm afraid. I think that's fair to say. Now, Obviously, this series isn't all about just the girls competing. There's actually a few male competitors as well. And the most stunning of them, for my money anyway, was Linus Grandfors, the Swedish boy, absolutely stealing the show on the aforementioned third race. Were in very tricky conditions. He had a bit of a spin on lap 1. I can't even remember if aided or not. I think it wasn't quite clear on the broadcast. Either way, so he got dropped to the very back of the field on lap 1 and stormed through the pack to retake the lead and drive off into the distance as well. Like, somehow he got a dominant last to first win. I don't even know how that's possible, but that was fantastic to watch. He was building up to that over the course of the weekend, but like in the other races, he was sort of in the upper midfield, just had very good runs, and I would have usually maybe just mentioned him as, yeah, we'll keep an eye out, but that race was insane. Go back and watch it if you haven't seen it. Race 3 in GB4 was just a banger all around, really, in terms of the entertainment factor. Last but not least, at least in terms of the rookie competitors in the grid, Brandon McCoggan, I think, yeah, names, you know, Irish boy. Looked very good, fastest guy in quali, fastest guy in practice apparently, put it on pole, obviously, by being the fastest in quali as you'd expect, and he also got a win in the second race, so he is clearly going to be there in that championship fight. He had some, you know, teething issues, let's call them, stalling on the grid in the in the first race, and the DNF in the third race, so not a flawless weekend by any stretch, but evidently the pace is there, so I think it'll just be a matter of time until he can actually string together a more coherent weekend and maybe get a hat-trick or something. He seems to have the pace for it, and obviously, let's be real, the GB4 field, not super duper competitive. One evidence here is the highest ranked returning driver, and actually I think the only returning driver, Harry Burgoyne Jr., who, you know, just with the experience, yes, he had a good run. He actually leads the championship now, I believe, which is a bit, you know, consistency, it helps, experience, it does help. But don't get confused by this. He will not be leading the championship in a few weeks, I don't think. It wasn't really impressive, and considering on this very weekend, your advantage is as big as it's going to get over the course of the season. The others will only catch you and eventually surpass you. Yeah, I don't really think we need to keep too close an eye on him, at least at the moment. Let's move on to the slightly faster boys racing in the UK. GB3 around Oulton Park was a really weird one for me to watch. Mainly because Oulton Park, as I said before, just a bit of a bad racetrack for cars of this particular speed. We're talking GB3, these are fast race cars, you know, for compared to an average car, if you know what I mean. So yeah, there just wasn't really a lot of overtaking. This was mainly decided by quali and then by who could keep it clean in the tricky conditions, which, fair enough, that's a challenge for a young driver, but therefore it feels really hard to actually rank the race pace of different drivers, because it feels like we didn't really get to see the true race pace of these people. That being said, Louis Sharp, dominant on debut to take the first race, took the lead instantly and drove off with it. Absolutely dominant performance and nothing to add here really. Obviously we know he was very hyped coming in, stellar season last year in British F4, but yeah, hitting the ground running like this, let's see if he'll do an Alex Dunne and just be straight in the title fight. But yeah, I mean, you'd guess so, right, with this, if it wasn't already clear before the season really. Now, race 2 and 3, as I said, were in wet conditions, which immediately means it was a bit, the order was shuffled around a tiny bit, you would assume, but not really either. It didn't, even that didn't create a lot of excitement, at least not in the second race. This time the biggest sort of story is that Bennett actually won the race, and he didn't just take the lead on the line, if I remember correctly. I think he overtook Sharp like halfway through the race or something, so proper on-track pass. Fair play there, and he is a guy that I certainly didn't have on my list to be a championship contender, although apparently I've been taught on Twitter, testing results suggest that he'll be rapid, so we'll keep an eye on it over the course of the season, but it certainly wasn't on my bingo card. And then the big and also, you know, very frustrating story with GB3 is Timek Kucharczyk, the Polish talent, with an unfortunate race in the second one. That's just so characteristic for him, where he had his flash of brilliance again. He had a fantastic opening laps, charging from P6 to P3, and like not just off the line, but again corner by corner. He had, I think it was the middle sector where he was just flying past people left, right and center on the opening lap. So, you know, phenomenal drive where you could just see he really clicked with the car. He could feel the condition. He was in there, right? He was in the zone for a few laps, and then it sort of fell apart in the closing stages again. You know, the progress halted, that's fine. Take a P3, we'd all be happy with that. But then in the last couple moments, he rear-ended sharp, wrecked his own front wing, I believe, like exit of the last corner going into the last lap. So literally with 1 lap to go, he ruined his podium. And I think this just sums up Kucharczyk a lot. Like, the guy clearly has talent, the guy is clearly quick, but I am getting very annoyed watching him. It was the same last year. Like, please, can we get the car over the line in one piece? Like, is that too much to ask? Anyway, the last thing I think we need to mention here is the story of the third race, really, which for me was Rowland and Weisenburger. Again, that's also a name. Reads, you know, it's surprisingly German in the writing. And obviously the guy very much not German. So again, I think you are just trying to fuck with me here. Please get better names. The crucial story here was Rowland and Weisenburger both struggling with mechanical problems and both retiring from effectively the lead, while Weisenburger was P2 at the time after starting on the reverse grid pole. And then Rowland took the lead instantly and was sort of in a dominant lead as well. Like the Weisenburger, yeah, that's very sad, but for Rowland, it's truly heartbreaking. That should have been his maiden victory in the category, and he just had to park it with some sort of engine failure. Really something you don't want to see in a spec series, certainly not twice in the same race. Now, there are obviously lots and lots and lots of other heavy hitters in the series. Will McIntyre, Ugochukwu, Gerard G, Mackenzie Cresswell and James Hadley, to name another one. He had a really unfortunate weekend. That could be an entire episode of its own. Just if you look at the scoring over here, don't get confused by his performance. He's a lot better than this. It's just the starting from the back every race that really hurt his chances a lot. Now, I don't think it's worth dwelling too much on this at the moment because, as I said, we can't really tell the race pace apart too much, so let's not waste any more time. There was another racing series around Oulton Park with young and exciting junior racers. That was the Janetta Juniors, but since it's not a single-seater, it won't be part of the single-seater episode of Race Week Review, naturally. But there'll be a sports car edition later in the week consisting of British GT and the Janetta Juniors. So if you want to know what the 14-year-olds are up to in their year before stepping up to F4, potentially, yeah, you better check out that episode, eh? Anyway, let's move on to the big boys in FE. Formula E is back with a historic race in Tokyo, so a very, very cool and unique location and an event that certainly had a lot of eyeballs on it for Formula E standards, I might add. But unfortunately, the on-track product is back to what I was sort of worried about. We went back to no real racing. Again, I don't know if it's the nature of the track or the lack of energy management requirements or a combination of the two. But either way, there just wasn't a whole lot of like actual, racing, the thing we tune in for usually week after week, especially in these top elite level series. I want to see the best of the best going wheel to wheel and not just following each other. It's okay. It was a terrible race, don't get me wrong here, but especially for Formula E standards, there's clearly still the issue that has sort of been a problem since the first race of the season. Now, this out of the way though, I have to say, strategically and in terms of the season dynamic, the power dynamic between the teams, it is still a super interesting season. So this is sort of, it's evolving into mini F1 where the storylines do play out quicker, but it starts to not play out on the racetrack itself, which is very sad, but at least there is still definitely more than enough reason to tune into in case you are sort of wondering, is it time to drop FE? Not quite yet. One of those reasons for me, personally at least, is Maxi Günther taking a win. Is third, fourth ever, he hasn't won that many. And crucially, another new winner in this particular season, keeping it super duper close. And it was a nice and fun battle as well. It was Günther versus Rowland, more or less the entire race. Bit of an odd moment, which I can hopefully show you, is Rowland actually conceded the lead to Günther, which at least to me and the commentators and I think the entire world looked very much like he did it on purpose. And I guess the thought process was to, you know, save some energy. He was leading the entire race, you know, that obviously gets very tough on the entire the energy management situation. But, and he also probably banked on getting the track position back in the attack mode, because Rowland had already used both of his attack modes at that time, Günther hadn't, so there was that opportunity to potentially get the track position back, but that was a horrible miscalculation because essentially Günther just drove off afterwards, not by much, but by more than enough to never really be under any threat afterwards, so that was a bit sad. Now, another guy we need to highlight is Antonio Felix da Costa. I've been talking about him a lot. Obviously a guy we need to keep an eye on because Porsche is banking on him this year. He is, I guess, in a bit of a hot seat scenario, even though he's performing very well, but just with Porsche telling him to focus only on FE this season, they clearly expect results. And he was delivering the results, like he was driving really hungry, for lack of a better phrase. It looked really good. That was the kind of the Costa in the recent memory we've only really seen in sports car racing. But he was there, he was making moves, he was moving forward. It was all well and good and brilliant to see until he was trying to pass Ollie Rowland for P2. And then Ollie Rowland sort of decided to show him the wall, and then Jake Dennis got P3 instead because the Costa, well, the wall thing. So not ideal, not an ideal situation, but nonetheless this is the kind of drives we want to see from the Costa. I couldn't care less about the result really. I'm just glad that we had the hungry da Costa back on track. For Pascal Wehrlein, unfortunately, the race was a bit rough. He got some front wing damage pretty early on, and yeah, he drove a decent race afterwards, but obviously actually getting into win or podium contention was more or less not going to happen afterwards. Another interesting thing, and I can't recall seeing it this excessively before at least, is the team play we've witnessed with in particular the two Porsche boys and the two Andretti boys, and it clearly shows the value of having your teammates close by while fighting at the front, because overtaking was so difficult means track position was super important all of a sudden. So both Porsche and Andretti used their teammates to get free attack modes for their leading drivers by backing up the field just a tiny bit. Obviously it doesn't take much, but just having your teammate back up the pack for like 2 corners, I guess, is all you need to keep your track position instead of losing, like, or risk losing 2 or 3 spots. So fantastic, great to see, and certainly a thing that'll, you know, make having 2 good drivers in your car more important in the future. So you can't just rely on having 1 good guy fighting for the win, like Jake Dennis, for example, did last year. If this becomes the norm, it might be getting even more difficult to do alone this year. Last but not least, Nick Cassidy, obviously championship leader going into the round, had a bit of a bizarre one. I don't really know what the pace was for the Jaguars in particular, but mostly for Cassidy. Yes, he actually finished P7 with sort of a late climb in the race when the others were running out of energy and some more carnage set in. But he was outside the points for most of it, and he was really just not moving forward. Again, racing was very difficult, so I don't know if that's a raw pace issue or just a overtaking isn't possible issue. Nonetheless, a situation we have to monitor quite closely because, yeah, he is one of the prime championship candidates. And then last but not least, his teammate Mitch Evans unfortunately put it in the wall himself, something you obviously don't want to see, but it can happen on the tight street circuits of Formula E. Now, that was a lot, I know, lots and lots of good racing happening, so these episodes are sort of bound to get longer as the season progresses. Nonetheless, I'm looking forward to hearing from you down in the comments to let me know what you think about all the action gone by, in particular Alisha Palmowski and the GB4 start, or, and this is another shout out we really have to get in here, Luna Fluxa, Mercedes Junior, still 13, I believe, years old, winning back-to-back races against male opposition as well in the first ever Champion of the Future Academy series, the F1 Academy linked karting series. But unlike F1 Academy, it is a mixed gender series with just a few guaranteed female seats. So while it wasn't elite level competition, still definitely didn't see Luna Fluxa winning both of those. And even more so, she didn't just win them, she absolutely dominated those races, winning by over 6 seconds in both. That's incredibly unheard of in karting. I am still, you know, sort of waiting to see if there was something wrong with the kart. Maybe she's going to lose those in a day. No, it can't happen. Not far, you know. I don't even know what's going on anymore. I did not see this coming. It's hard to believe that it's real, but apparently it is the gist of it. Also, Ella Häkkinen, that name might ring a bell, and yes, they are very much related. Also won a race in her category, so there is female talent coming up the karting ranks right now, and they are now getting the platform to showcase their skills, and I am all for it. Obviously, there hasn't been any karting content in the channel recently. It'll return. I just don't really know the format because I'm I'm positive weekly karting content is way too much, and I also just can't guarantee to watch everything in time. Usually it takes me the entire week to catch up with the karting action. So I'll do a first 3 months kind of update video of what happened in 2024 so far in karting. Soonish, let me know if you're interested in that sort of thing. And otherwise, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.